In this episode of my Director of Football series, the full playlist will be linked in the description. I'm going to be analysing why if Ahmad and Greenwood were to be United's right wing options for next season, it could be the perfect stylistic blend from a squad building perspective, whilst also statistically analysing both players' FB ref reports to show why I consider the two to be two different types of right wingers. Obviously a lot hinges on Greenwood's future, which as of yet no one knows despite what they may tell you, but I'm sure that even those that don't want him back would have to admit that this guy's potential is insane. Ballon d'Or contender level potential, which I don't think is an exaggeration, as I'll explain when I analyse Greenwood's very unique skill set. Ahmad as well has huge potential, being essentially what Antony was meant to be, but is Ahmad actually better than Antony at the moment? And even if he is he Manchester United level? In 2021, looking at both of these two, you'd be pretty confused if you were told that United's right wing options going into 2024 looked not even like Europa League standard, but worse than some mid-table Premier League clubs. The thought of Ronaldo, Beckham and even the likes of Nani and Valencia bring a tear to my eye when looking at Antony and Pellistri in this squad. And if you, like me, are a bit of a nostalgia merchant, then head over to Jersey FIFA where you can find all their retro Manchester United shirts going back to the early 90s. You can use code Atlantis at checkout for a discount. A link will be in my Instagram bio, which I will leave linked in the description. On the surface, United's right wing options look pretty abysmal, with Pellistri and Antony both being players who I think would struggle to start regularly for a side like Bournemouth, let alone for Manchester United. But there is some hope, and rather than it coming in the form of a big money signing, like I suggested in episode 3 of this series, which will be linked below, it could come from getting the full or even 75% of the potential out of both Amad Diallo and Mason Greenwood. Now I have also done an alternative scenario if Greenwood was to be sold in the summer, who United should look to replace him with, but for the sake of this video let's assume there are no outside factors and assume that both Greenwood and Amad return to United fit for next season. How good could these two actually be? Well, I'll start off with Mason Greenwood, and the big question before he'd even put on the blue of Getafe was whether he'd be able to rekindle his form of 2021 after not playing football for around 17 or 18 months. And to be fair to him, his attitude and his application seems to have been excellent, and now coming into the end of 2023, Greenwood seems to be showing signs that his 2020-2021 form may be able to return. Now from a playing perspective, the thing that I love about Greenwood is that he's not just a truly elite level finisher, someone who is genuinely up there in terms of pure shooting accuracy alongside the likes of Julian Alvarez and Erling Haaland, but he also contributes in much deeper positions, particularly on the flank from the right side. He has a dribbling flair and acceleration of a winger, utilising a couple of step overs before bursting past a defender, with the capabilities of going left or right, cutting inside onto his left, or going down the outside on his right, all coming from his fantastic ball control, shooting and crossing ability with his so-called weaker right foot. I've said it before, but it always frustrates me when I see a player like Antony, who doesn't just have a mediocre weaker foot compared to his stronger one, but a weaker right foot that is practically unusable, as it makes his play so predictable. However, this certainly is not the case with Greenwood, who in his short time at Getafe this season has already left an impressive statistical footprint. But before we come on to Greenwood's FB ref report and what it says about him as a player, what about Amad Diallo? Well, I think Amad offers a perfect alternative option to Greenwood, as whilst like the infamous United wonder kid, he is also left-footed. He is far less explosive and obviously nowhere near his level in terms of shooting in and around the box. Think of Greenwood as more like a Mo Salah, whilst Amad is more like a Mahrez, essentially what Antony was meant to be. However, Amad is a lot more considered with his passing, and his decision making to me is a lot quicker and overall just better, and I really can't see him being anything but an improvement on Antony when it comes to his offensive output in the final third. He will of course be required to match Antony's pressing and defensive work rate, but in possession I think he's a much better passer than Antony, just as good a ball carrier, and being a lot more efficient in congested areas, accompanied with a greater propensity to actually retain possession, something that has been costing United when Antony starts on the right. But now looking at Greenwood's FB ref report from the 1,017 minutes he's played in La Liga for Getafe this season, as well as Amad's 22-23 Championship FB ref report for Sunderland where he played 2,586 minutes, we can see just how good both players are in multiple facets of their game. Now Greenwood is categorised as a midfielder rather than as a attacking midfielder or a winger, but even still you can see what he really excels in. And to be honest, playing in a conservative Getafe side from the right of a midfield 4, his FB ref report probably would have been skewed negatively anyway. But as you can see, he overperforms his non-penalty XG by 0.06 per 90, as you'd expect, but a fairly low non-penalty XG, so he definitely isn't getting a lot of high quality chances in this Getafe side, though he's still getting a lot of opportunities to create chances for others and progress the ball forward directly with his dribbling, as he ranks around the 90th percentile for his XG assisted, whilst also putting in a high volume of crosses into the box. And when it comes to his ball carrying, as you'd expect, he looks very impressive, ranking very highly for his carries into the final third and penalty area, as well as a number of successful take-ons he's completing as well. Ahmad, on the other hand, actually might look more impressive than Greenwood in certain areas. He also overperformed his non-penalty XG, but this time by 0.15 per 90, largely down to a number of screamers he scored from outside the box last season. He only ranks around the 60th percentile for his XG assisted, showing that at the moment Ahmad's creativity is translating more to his ball progression and goal output than it is to his chance creation, though I definitely see this going up in a better side alongside the right development in Ahmad's game individually. You can see for his progressive passes into the final third, and his pass completion rates for all range of his passes, he ranks in the low to high 90th percentiles, proving that Ahmad is not just a key ball progressor for Sunderland via his passes, but also someone who is incredibly reliable when it comes to retaining possession, which would be an instant improvement on the chaotic Anthony. A significant amount of through balls and switches alongside ball carrying and dribbling metrics in the mid 80th percentiles paints a picture of a well-rounded attacker who isn't just a winger, but also a playmaker as well. And so this got me thinking, do Manchester United even need a winger like Michael Elise, if they have not just Greenwood potentially returning, but also a similar type of winger to Elise in Ahmad himself? But the question probably comes down to whether Ahmad is good enough, and that is one of the things we have to find out in the second half of the season. Ten Hag has to give him significant game time from the start ahead of both Anthony and Pellistri, as Ahmad clearly has a higher ceiling than both. The last thing that United want is going into the summer still not really having seen enough of Ahmad to make a solid evaluation of his abilities. If he's given game time and begins to look like the player he was in the Championship, now in the Premier League, then I think he has to stay next season. If he looks a little premature to the Premier League, I think a loan move to a lower table Premier League side for next season would be ideal. Somewhere like Bournemouth or Everton, where Ahmad will be playing under managers who I think are very good tactically, and would set up Ahmad in an organised pressing and defensive system, whilst also giving him the necessary degree of creative freedom as well. After a good season on loan, the avenue back to United's first team is firmly open, but as I said, at the moment there's definitely a question mark against Ahmad's name, although I do believe that he does have the ability to be a solid alternative option to Greenwood as early as next season, if indeed both players do stay at the club. I mean, just thinking of a forward line with Garnacho and Greenwood either side of Højlund is stuff of Football Manager folklore, but with Bruno Fernandes in the number 10 position behind, and Ahmad from the right, potentially also Rashford there as well, United have an abundance of attacking the talent, not just for the next 2 to 3 years, but also for the next 5 to 6 and beyond.